The other day I got this incredible comment from Kiwi Mike 69, who said, I draw daily. Is drawing out of my imagination considered as making art? And I think that's a profound question. You guys know that on this channel, mostly I do art from observation rather out of my imagination. But I think the question gets is more pointed than just what's on the surface. And so I kind of want to investigate the idea of what is art, what art is not, and how do we know if what we're making actually is art. So let's get into that.
One thing that I think we need to talk about is the idea that some people espouse that everything is art. And we certainly see that with a lot of modern and contemporary artists where they want to sort of raise the question of what is art. I remember going to the LACMA Museum in Los Angeles, and they had art in the gallery where it was the mail just piled up on the floor. Every day the mailman came and threw the mail on the floor, and the mail would pile up, for weeks. And that was one of the art exhibits. Another piece of art that they had was a door from a gas station, like just a normal glass door that you would have at any regular gas station. They detached it from the gas station and they put it in the LACMA Museum and Los Angeles County Museum of Modern Art, I think is what it is. They had another piece that was kind of interesting. They had somebody requested that when they be cremated, they have their ashes mechanically converted into a diamond, and then that was made into a diamond ring. And I thought that was awesome. The whole point of different pieces of artwork like that obviously are to get you to go, is it art? Is it not art? And there are definitely artists who they enjoy raising that question. There's the famous piece by the Dadaist artist who enrolled a men's urinal in an art competition. And I can't remember now if he won or not. He certainly won in the mind of artists in the world, I think, because people remember that. But this is a discussion that people have and that people like raising. Is that art? I will tell you what I think, that I do think that we have to assert that some things are art and some things are not. Because if everything is art, which some people suggest, then in a way it's tantamount to saying that nothing is art. I mean, we understand that the word has a meaning and that it differentiates something that is art from some things that are not art. And if you can't tell, I mean, typically when you go to a museum, if it's a traditional museum, there will be paintings, and we understand that, there will be painted surfaces that you'll go and look at. But we often understand that the painted surface inside of the picture frame is the art more so than the painted surface of the wall outside of the picture frame. Nobody comes to the museum and stares at the gaps in between the Van Gogh and the Monet paintings, right? And so I think most people instinctively understand that, but there certainly is a cottage industry of artists and art schools, and maybe museums too, that sell the idea that understanding even what art is a complex idea. And maybe it is. Maybe it's above my pay grade. But that's sort of my opinion, is that while the question is often asked, it seems to me apparent that at least there is an answer. So let's get into that. If we kind of assert that there is, not everything is art, there are some stuff that's art and some stuff that isn't, then what do we mean by that? And I think one thing that maybe we're asking here, if I draw from imagination every day, is that art? Maybe maybe the question is asking, is it good art? Is the art good? And, I'll say here with this painting I'm doing, I have heard tons of people say that doing art from observation, painting from observation or drawing from observation, that's not art because you're just copying what you see. Even a lot of people in the plein air movement are pretty snooty about that. They'll say, if you just copy what you see and you don't intensely alter the image, then that's not art. I've also heard people say the same thing about, animal portraiture, that there's no art to it. This isn't art. And so I probably a lot of people would say have never made a piece of art in my whole life, because there are a lot of painters out there and artists who would say that drawing a painting, making a painting of a cat, is not art, and that it really can't be, right? And so there's some sort of a value statement attached to the idea of what is art, and I think that a lot of times people are asking if it's good art or not, and so we need to, I think, also define our terms here in terms of when people are asking if it's good, we need to ask in what way. In what way is it good, right? So one way that we can kind of answer that question and ask if our art is good, if it's art, meaning is it good, is I often think about, is the art reaching its goal? And to me, one of the, if not the primary goal of all artwork is some form of communication. There's something you're trying to communicate, some idea, some feeling. Different artists try to communicate different things. In the genre of painting, visual arts, a lot of times you see artists trying to depict a story. Certain painters try to depict a story, while other painters, maybe they don't try to depict a story, but they are just trying to capture, a sense of light or a feeling. You have narrative painters like Leon Jerome, where, he is really exercising his technique, but he's also trying to tell a story in the painting. And those, used to be very popular. And then in the 19th century, with the Impressionists and the Realists, a lot of painters got away from that they didn't really want to tell a story per se, that the story was just the depiction of itself. And then, you also have artists in the abstract and modern art, where a lot of times the story and the thing that's being communicated by the artist is maybe the act of painting itself. Think about a Jackson Pollock, in lieu of a meaningful title to some of his paintings. Typically, when I see a Jackson Pollock painting, I'm thinking of Jackson Pollock and how he painted it. And to a lesser extent, we may think about that with painters like Van Gogh and Monet and the Impressionists as well. There's a component of what they painted. There's also a component of who painted it and how they did it. That's part of the story of the painting. So, there's different goals for different artists, but think for yourself every time that you pick up a pencil or a paintbrush, there is a goal that you're trying to accomplish. And you may not consciously know what it is, but there is a goal. And I think it's definitely worth thinking about consciously what you're trying to express. For instance, if I told you that here, when I was doing this painting, I was actually trying to paint a dog, I would consider this a failure of a painting, because it doesn't look very convincing like a dog, right? But actually, I had a goal specifically. This is a painting for my friend Andrea, and her cat passed away, and I wanted to do this painting for her of her cat. And so not only did I want it to look like a cat, I wanted to specifically look like this cat, Ember. And that was one of my goals that I wanted it to communicate. And I'm lucky because I think it did turn out looking like her cat, and I think that they liked the painting. So, to me, when I think, is it good from that perspective of what am I trying to communicate, what am I trying to capture, and the sky's the limit in terms of what you can try to capture and what you can try to communicate. I did feel like I communicated it. And so you can kind of think about it in those terms. What am I trying to communicate? What goal am I trying to accomplish? Maybe it isn't what you're trying to communicate. Maybe another goal that you're trying to accomplish is to exercise a certain technique, to build your technique, or to capture, a feeling, or to capture the light. And, with technique, I think like you can see, we could talk about it being good in terms of technique as well, right? So a lot of people say like it's not good art or it is good art. They mean, or back to the original statement, is it art? They might mean, is it art of a certain quality? For instance, I recently went into one of the art galleries in my town and was looking at the art and kind of measuring myself against some of the art in there and trying to see like, could I get good enough in terms of technique and all of the qualities of paintings to maybe someday have my art hanging in a gallery, right? And trying to kind of measure that. And so, some artists, I'll talk about Leon Jerome. Some artists, they have a very specific technique that they're trying to go after. And I feel like with his paintings, he's often trying to tell a story and exercise his technique. Then you have painters like John Singer Sargent or Bouguereau. These painters have exquisite technique, very different techniques, right? And so maybe you're doing a painting and you want your painting to look like John Singer Sargent. Then maybe actually one of your goals is trying to emulate some of those techniques. You're trying to do an alla prima painting. Maybe you want to copy Monet. I'm doing a master copy of a Monet painting, and I'm trying to understand his techniques and his brush strokes and his colors, right? And so there can be different goals that you're trying to reach besides what you're trying to communicate, and that can make it good. I even think, piggybacking off of my previous video talking about doing art over the last year, I had a goal that I set to try to do art every day for a year. And part of that goal was met because of doing the art every day. But I had a secondary goal, which was to try to enjoy my art more. And, to a certain extent, maybe I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted. So in a certain way, maybe I didn't succeed in that art. So I think thinking about, like, is your art good with regards to the techniques that you're trying to do, or is your art good with regards to the goal that you're setting for yourself? I think that can help you. And then I talked about it briefly, but I also think we can talk about, is it good? Is your art good compared to what? Is it good compared to John Singer Sargent? If you're asking if my art is good compared to them, of course not. Is it good compared to the paintings that I'm seeing in the art gallery in my town? I actually think it isn't. It isn't good, right? I'm not ready to be hung in the gallery yet. But I also think there's another way that I would really recommend you comparing yourself, not just to Rembrandt and Singer Sargent and Bouguereau and Jerome and those guys and Monet. You should also compare yourself to yourself. Where were you at last painting? Where were you at the last drawing you did? And that's a much more healthy way, I think, to look at the way that you do art, the way that you figure out if your art is good or not. And so to me, I think if we go through these things, you can kind of decide for yourself if what you're doing is art. Based on what I'm hearing, I would say that, yeah, of course it is art, because you're drawing from imagination. I mean, a lot of people would say that is one of the highest forms of art. But if what you mean by the question is my art any good, then you have to kind of dig deeper and think about, what does good mean to you? Is it good in terms of reaching your goals? Is it good in terms of techniques you're exploring? Is it good compared to other artists around you? Like, do you have an aspirational goal to draw at a certain level? Or is your goal simply to just draw every day? And even with those things, even with goals like that, and comparing yourself to great artists, I also think that it's very, very helpful to compare yourself to yourself yesterday, right? Compare this painting to yesterday's painting or to last year's painting, because I think a lot of people probably look at my art and they say it isn't very good, and I certainly do that most days. But I also think that it's valuable for me to go back and look at how I was painting last year or 2 or 3, 4 years ago and compare that to how I'm painting now, and I can see that actually my painting is a little bit better than it was in the past, right? It's good to take stock like that. Sometimes I'll do a painting and I'll go, you know what? It's worse than my last painting. And it helps me to kind of sit down and debrief and think, how could I make that painting better? I think ultimately that's how you get good, thinking about all of those things. So hopefully that helped. And I want you all to feel, empowered by this idea and not feel like you have to really answer to me or to anybody else out there. You can find plenty of people who will gatekeep, who will tell you that you're not good enough, who will tell you that you're never going to be good enough. And my recommendation is to not listen to those people, but instead to encourage yourself through your art practice, and to think about what it is that you're trying to accomplish, what it is that you want to communicate with your art. What is it? Why are you trying? What is your goal with your art? What techniques do you want to emulate? What artists do you want to emulate? What can you learn from them? And what can you learn from yourself? And just remember that your art matters, you matter, the creativity that you have inside of you. When I say you have a voice that matters, that's what I mean. It matters. And so go out there, go be creative.
Hey, real quick before I let you go, I wanted to talk about drawing from imagination real quick. I actually have a sketchbook where I only draw from imagination. So if you'd like to see those drawings, click on this video here. I'll see you next time.